Thatcher.
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman who has just sat down started off his speech by making it clear that his party would vote against the government tonight. He gave no justification for that course of action. He and those behind him know full well that my right honourable friend's hands would be greatly strengthened in Luxembourg if he had a really good vote to go there behind him. Many people will not follow he has proposed. Not only did he give no justification for that action, he gave virtually no positive proposals whatsoever. At one time, he seemed to be advocating a policy of perpetual disagreement in the community, and then having complained about unemployment, launched into an attack against Japanese investment in this country. There are many people in this country who are very grateful for Japanese investment. May I thank my right honourable friend for his clear exposition, for the way in which he put things. I noticed that at Luxembourg we shall not reach conclusions, but I think he'll be the first to agree that we can't influence the way things go at Maastricht by the arguments and proposals we put forward. He made it very clear that one of the difficulties about discussing the matter of the community is that it is riddled with jargon and with Eurospeak, and that words are used which do not have a precise meaning. For example, we use the word subsidiarity. It is a vague term. It raises far more questions than it answers. When we use these terms, we should be careful to define them. Mr. Speaker, I do not wish to speak for very long, so may I therefore set the background to my remarks as I see it, and then raise 5 points which I hope my right honourable friends will consider in their deliberations at Luxembourg. The issues we're debating today are fundamental to the future role of this Parliament and deserve to be treated seriously. Fundamental to the kind of Europe our children will live in, and they are fundamental to our future relationship with the wider world, especially Eastern European states and also the United States of America. And the fact that we are debating these issues itself reminds us of the cardinal principle of our system of government, that ministers are directly answerable to Parliament and the buck stops here. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Minister, has previously spoken eloquently of his wish to see Britain at the heart of Europe. He is right, and we have been. And that is how we secured reform of the community's finances. That is how we won reform of the common agricultural policy, though there is more to do. And that is how we started the creation of the single market. None of these things could have been achieved from the sidelines. We had to be in the midst of battle, and we were. And we won many of them, and the position as we finished the battle was far, far better for Britain than it was when we started. And it's by staying in the centre that we can press the case for free trade through the gap and for reaching agreements with the countries of Eastern Europe. My right honourable friends have pursued these matters with vigour, and they are right to do so. Mr. Speaker, the summary of the documents for the forthcoming Luxembourg Council, and I have not seen the full documents, they came too late, and I share the views of those who protested that they were not available. The summary reveals a quite different destiny for Europe than any we were ever given to expect when we went in. They are proposals for a federal union. They call for a common foreign security and in due course a common defence policy in which majority voting would apply. They call for a great extension of community powers and competence in energy, in health, and over labour laws, again often with majority voting. May I say one thing at this stage, majority voting? We had some experience of the extension of that voting in the Single European Act. I suggest that we are very careful before we consider extending majority voting any further. The fact is that majority voting means that we give the community the right to impose on the British people laws which this House, its elected representatives, may fundamentally disagree with. It's a serious step to take. And the document also calls for a central bank to set monetary policy leading to a single European currency. The Times has referred to all this as supranationalism run riot. And my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, declared in this House on the 18th of June, a European superstate would not be acceptable to me or to the House, and in my judgment, it would not be acceptable to the Council. I wholeheartedly agree with both the Times and with my right honourable friend. Few of us will forget what Mr. Delors told members of the European Parliament in 1988. In 10 years' time, 80% of economic legislation and perhaps even fiscal and social legislation will be of community origin, he said. That is the road he wants us to take, and it is the road that we must resist. Now, I understand that my right honourable friends cannot reveal their full negotiating hand, but I hope that in their negotiations in Luxembourg, they will keep in mind the following 5 points. First, the present debate in Europe touches issues more profound than any since the community's foundation. It is of an entirely different order of magnitude and importance from the debate on the Single European Act. That made some important changes in the field of majority voting to make it more difficult for countries which do not believe in free trade to block the completion of the common market. It repeated earlier commitments to economic and monetary union while attempting to define it only as economic and monetary cooperation. What is now being considered is a massive extension of the community's powers and competence into almost every area of our national life and that of other member states. It will be the greatest abdication of national and parliamentary sovereignty in our history. Some people argue that the changes envisaged in the draft treaties on the table in Luxembourg would not actually happen for many years, so that there's no need to worry. But that is a very dangerous approach, because once these powers were given away, they would never be taken back. All the evidence, I believe, indicates that while our people want Britain to be actively involved in Europe, and of course I was the Prime Minister and enabled the Channel Tunnel to get going, so I do believe in having more to do with Europe, I believe our people do not want to see a massive extension of the powers of Brussels into every corner of national life, even if it is dressed up as a step-by-step approach, a kind of federal Europe achieved by stealth. So I fully support the firm stand which my right honourable friend
Order. Mrs. Thatcher.
As I quoted my right honourable friend, the British Foreign Secretary, and my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, the firm stand they have taken against any commitment to a federal Europe. And I would hope that most people in this House were against a federal Europe. Otherwise, what is the point of standing as candidates at the next election? Supposed to hand over all your powers to represent your constituents to another parliament.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, we should not, second point, Mr. Speaker, we should, thank you very much, we should not let those who support a federal Europe pretend that they are somehow more European than the rest of us. They are not. They're just more federal. There is nothing specifically European about a federal structure. Indeed, the opposite. It is the nation-state which is European. It has been the great achievement of the community to bring about greater cooperation between those nation-states, not to merge them. Instead of pouring distinctive nations into institutions and arrangements of the same mold, we should be encouraging different kinds and degrees of cooperation between European countries. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, said as much in his speech of the 31st of May in Shropshire, and I heartily agree with him. This sort of European cooperation is already developing. For example, in other European matters, France feels easiest with different defence relationships with NATO than the rest of us. But in practice, she contributes in important ways to the West defence. No one says France is isolated. They accept the difference. So the Schengen group of countries have been able to reduce their frontier controls because of their common borders. We recognise that would not do for us in Britain because considerations of security and immigration for an island nation are quite different. That doesn't mean that they can't reduce their borders because all their geography indicates that. These different relationships make sense for those who participate, but they're not a model for everyone. The true Europeans are those who base themselves on Europe's history and traditions rather than on constitutional blueprints. Third, Mr. Speaker, we should not for one moment fall for attempts to argue that a federal Europe would mean a devolution of powers. If that were the case, why change what we have at present? Powers are devolved, in that they are held by national parliaments and government as they should be. For Monsieur Delors to say that his proposals would mean devolving powers is ridiculous. They are not his or the community's to devolve. Our sovereignty...
I think that the Honourable Lady did give way and then the Honourable Member didn't rise again. Well,
the rather lovely Privy Councillors wanted to get up, I
Order! What is the point of order?
Can I be helpful? As I am sitting almost direct opposite the Honourable Member, he did stand up and he was pulled down by his colleagues sitting next to him.
Order! I don't know about things like that. It's up to the Right Honourable Lady.
Next question, says I. My honourable friend might find it better to intervene then. Our sovereignty does not come from Brussels. It is ours by right and by heritage. We choose what we devolve to the community, not the other way round.
I'm most grateful. Mr. Speaker, that was correct. I was pulled down by one of my colleagues.
I think the Honourable Gentleman should be more robust.
I apologise, Mr. Speaker, this is delaying the House. Precious time. I'm most grateful to my right honourable friend for giving away. But of course, in the definition of federalism, which she was just enunciating, would she not agree that the American Secretary of State, James Baker, also said that was the definition. It was devolution with common integrated subjects.
Precisely why I made my point clear. Our sovereignty does not come from Brussels. My honourable friend is not arguing that it does. It is ours by right and by heritage. We choose what we devolve to the community, not the other way around. Now, the fourth consideration, which I hope my right honourable friends will have in mind, is the danger of being drawn along by what start out as vague commitments but end up as highly specific and damaging proposals. There's a much greater willingness in some European countries than in Britain to sign up to great rhetorical statements and declarations without worrying too much about what they will mean in practice. And it's welcome that as some of the earlier declarations of intent have been committed to treaty language, a number of governments, not just ours, have become more worried about the practical consequences. Such is the case with the Social Charter, and moreover, some are now seeing that a single currency could not possibly work with the disparities between European economies as great as they are now, and that setting the goal of a single currency has no relevance to Europe's current economic problems. Moreover, may I please finish this section? Moreover, to go to a single currency is not just a practical matter, it is a fundamental question of principle. It is not only a merger of currencies, it is to give up for all time the right of the banks of England and Scotland and our Treasury to issue our own currency, backed by our own economic policy, answerable to our own Parliament. That is why I do not believe in a single currency. If nevertheless some other members of the European community wish to agree to the idea of a single European currency, and not all of them belong to the exchange rate mechanism yet, they are entitled to go ahead and do so. Luxembourg is already linked to the Belgian franc, and the Dutch guilder is close to the Deutschmark. But unless legislation on a single currency were contained in a separate treaty, certain consequences could follow. I will give three. First, Britain, although not in a single currency herself, may be expected to contribute to the huge increases in structural funds required in order to allow the weaker member countries to participate in EMU. Second, unforeseen consequences could arise as European courts interpret the single currency provisions in the context of the full Treaty of Rome. And third, there's no way in which the economies of the former communist states of Eastern Europe could withstand the pressures placed upon their fragile industries by a single currency. Witness what has happened to Eastern Germany. We have to complete the transformation of the countries of Eastern Europe into free enterprise democracies and enable them to join the European community as soon as possible. They need an anchor to the West. Before I come to my final point, I give way to the Right Honourable Gentleman.
I agree with quite a lot of what the Right Honourable Lady has said about the European and Monetary Union. But I, like many other members of this House, have seen a number of the reports of what she's supposed to have said, as well as those things that she actually did say. And what I find it very difficult to understand is why did she accept the exchange rate mechanism when she said so many harsh things about it?
But Right Honourable Gentleman, I will go into it. It'll take a few moments. First, I am fully in agreement with an exchange rate mechanism anchored to the Deutschmark, because it is in a way like anchoring to something to the gold standard, provided you do it at the right value. That is what we have done, and we have done it with a latitude of 6%. That should be perfectly enough to accommodate any swings that we get in the exchange rate. It is if you go to a single locked currency that you get enormous difficulties because you have no latitude to vary the currency. Therefore, any difficulties in your monetary or economic system have to go either to increased inflation or to increased recession and increased unemployment. The 6% swing does give us some latitude, but I believe that joining the exchange rate mechanism gave us all we needed for stiffening against inflation, and I do not believe that it is necessary or desirable to go to any further into stage 2 or stage 3. Right Honourable Gentleman, ask me, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman, ask me, great question. right honourable gentleman asked a straight question, has over the last 31 years he's received a straight answer. Finally, Mr. Speaker, looking beyond the borders of the European community, we have to strengthen and develop Europe's trade with the United States and the rest of North America, Canada and Mexico, perhaps through moves to a transatlantic free trade area. Further, the European nations have to encourage the Soviet Union and its constituent republics as they struggle along the path of reform. We will not achieve any of this if we accept a centralized, inward-looking European community. We have both in Luxembourg and Maastricht to speak out and reach out to the wider world. And in my right honourable friend the Prime Minister, we have a leader with the vision and sense of purpose. Sense of purpose to do just that. I wish my right honourable friends well in their great task and give them my full support.